This is Val Tapia of 38 IZ Videos. Coming up, our musical guest today is someone who is coming on June 14th, on Thursday, June 14th, to the Musical Instrument Museum, otherwise known as the MIM. It's none other than Paula Cole, who was really one of the premier voices of the 90s and really was part of almost a new generation of women in popular music. And we're going to get a little bit to her history as well as her latest album called Ballads, which is a cover album of many jazz standards. And so without further ado, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak to the one and only Miss Paula Cole. Paula, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Val. Nice to meet you. Hi, everybody.
Hey, and to get started, okay, we're going to discuss right now your latest album. It's called Ballads, and it is a cover album of jazz standards, as we said. Give us a little bit of the origins of the record, if you will, and maybe some of your personal favorites on this.
Sure. It's a collection of 20 songs. I was so pent up. I've been wanting to make this album my whole life. I started as a jazz singer. So we recorded 31 songs in 5 days, and I cut it down to 20. But they all really fit together. This is dedicated to my dad. He was a professional musician and a bass player, mostly upright, but also electric, and he plays many instruments. Some of these songs I heard through him, and I grew up learning American standards, whether it was from Billie Holiday or Bessie Smith, but there's also Bob Dylan songs and Nina Simone songs, and there's a Bobby Gentry classic, the Ode to Billie Joe. So I'm really mixing the great American songbook in a liberal sense, and it's a rootsy jazz album. So it's like guitar-based and rootsy and soulful. It's not too slick or overproduced. I like it that way, more raw.
Couldn't agree with you more. So let's go on some of your favorites. Why don't we talk about the song "God Bless the Child"? And this version of it was done by Billie Holiday at one point. What would you say about it? It was like 1941, and these songs really span from the 30s to the 60s. Is that correct?
That's right. These largely, I didn't plan it that way, but I noticed the vast majority of the songs I chose are either from the 30s and the 60s, with a few in between. But I think that those were periods of big social upheaval, and people were looking to music for healing. And also there was a lot of disparity amongst people, and they were writing amazing words. I consider Billie Holiday not just like the greatest jazz singer that ever lived, but she's one of the greatest singer-songwriters. She wrote God Bless the Child, and those lyrics really are relevant today as they were then when they were written in the late 30s.
And you mentioned Bobby Gentry. She's somebody who does, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't hear about her from a lot of modern country artists, unfortunately, and I could be wrong on that, but I just don't hear her name that often. And you did Ode to Billie Joe. And tell us a little bit about that song and what made you decide to record that one, which you did justice to, I might add.
Oh my gosh, what a classic. I mean, I remember hearing that one again through my parents and just loved it. It's like, well, whatever happened to Billie Joe, and what did she do? You know, what is this story? It's so complicated. It's a mystery, and then the storyline happens over dinner, like a Southern family dinner. You know, and Papa said to Mama as he passed around the black-eyed peas. Like, it's just they're having dinner and they're talking, and there's this amazing mystery unfolding. And Bobby Gentry wrote these words. And then she had a number one hit with it. She produced this song herself, which was, you know, it just wasn't done then for women, especially in country, to produce themselves. It became a number one tune in America. And she did some things in Vegas, but she kind of disappeared. She won Best New Artist, Grammy, and she probably didn't like a lot about being a pop star and chose to withdraw. I think she went to the San Fernando Valley of California. But I love her. I love her writing. I love that she produced herself and that she was a strong, beautiful woman, you know, and I guess I want to pay some homage to her. And have us all look back at Bobby Gentry.
In your opinion, do you think that she's gotten the recognition she deserves from a historical standpoint?
Maybe not. I mean, also, I think it speaks volumes about the music business that it was just not hospitable to somebody like her.
Right.
She didn't like it. And I relate to that. I too won Best New Artist Grammy, yes, and then didn't like the music business. And I went away also. I produced myself also. I write complicated lyrics also. I really relate to her. And I just wanted to bow down to her and have us think about her for a minute. I think she should be resurrected now.
Well, that was a great pick. So like I said, I definitely wanted to talk to you about that. And you mentioned Bob Dylan a couple minutes ago. The Ballad of Hollis Brown, another great pick. Give us a little bit of your version of it, and what were the origins of it?
Well, thanks for choosing that song. It's such an amazing lyric, isn't it? It's like a mini novel. The Ballad of Hollis Brown and The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll. I covered both, and they're both like mini novels. The Ballad of Hollis Brown, I mean, is about a poor farmer and his 7 children on a South Dakota farm. And he can't afford to live, he can't afford to feed his family. And it goes through 11 verses. It's 11 poetic verses just describing their conditions. And it's a lot. I couldn't do it justice now, but the way I played it, because I played a piano on that track, was I wanted to honor Nina Simone at the same time. So I'm taking her piano part that she played a lot, like on her classic Sinner Man, and I'm weaving it into the Ballad of Hollis Brown. So it's grooving along, and it tells this amazing story. I think songs like that and the Ode to Billie Joe belong next to classic American standards like My One and Only Love and God Bless the Child. I think they belong together, and I love to break down barriers for the world to be more mixed, to be more healthy and heterogeneous musically, as well as every other way too.
Well said. I couldn't have said that better myself. And speaking of Nina Simone, I imagine you were thrilled to see her inducted finally into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame earlier this year.
Oh God, was she? I didn't even know that, Val. All right, that's beautiful. Finally,
and long overdue. So it was definitely as
yes.
Yeah. To go back a little bit, the first time I saw you, Paula, it wasn't heard on record. I actually saw you on a short-lived VH1 show called Duets. And on that, you did one of your songs, Watch the Woman's Hands, but I turned it to VH1 and I saw you doing a version with Melissa Etheridge, one of her songs called Occasionally. And I said, this is the voice. Oh my God. Couldn't believe it. And wow. Take us back to that show, if your recollections, if you could, and what was it like playing with Melissa that earlier in your career?
I had just toured with Melissa. I was her opening act on her Yes I Am tour in '95, which was fantastic. Fantastic. That was probably the biggest part of her career. Yes. So she was filling arenas, and I was so lucky to be opening for Melissa at that time. I mean, just the hits flying off of that album were incredible, and her live show was so incredible. And there I was, with my short black hair and my nose ring and my black boots, and I'm opening for Melissa, and I'm on my first album. And I was making fans the old-fashioned way, which is through live performance. So we became friends then, and she handpicked me and a few other newcomers at the time. I mean, Joan Osborne and Jewel and Sophie B. Hawkins and we were all kind of put together by Melissa and curated for this duet show on VH1. So we were supposed to choose a Melissa song, and I was thinking, I don't know if it's right for me to choose one of her ballsy rockers, So I chose something lesser known, and I felt I could put my own stamp on a little better, which was Occasionally. And then we were able to perform one of our own songs, and I chose Watch the Woman's Hands. And then I toured with her bass player, and I've played with her again live since then. I mean, she's an amazing force in the music business.
Another well-said comment. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And and that first album was called Harbinger. and that was
Yes,
originally released on an independent label. Is that correct?
that's right. It
And
was released on Imago,
yeah,
which was a left of center boutique label. I was on that label with Amy Mann's first solo project
wow,
and Henry Rollins, um, and some other artists like a hip hop band called Basshead. Cool stuff, really
yes,
left of center stuff. And I got a lot of critical acclaim on that first album, Harbinger. That's the album that Peter Gabriel heard when he asked me to sing on his Secret World Live tour. So I flew to Germany and started up a tour with him and did that whole Secret World Live video with Peter, which was amazing. And then I would come back to the States and I would tour and support Harbinger, which was released in 1994.
right,
And that was the beginning of my career. It got critical acclaim. I was gaining fans. I was touring my ass off. I was just going around the States over and over and over and flying to Europe to play with Peter. I'd play arenas with Peter and then I'd play coffee houses with my
wow,
original material and just kept touring. And I really didn't stop for about a 7-year period of touring and making albums and touring and making albums.
right,
So from about 92, 93 to 2000, I was just working, and it started with Harbinger.
wow. And just to remind our viewers, we're speaking with Paula Cole, and Paula Cole is headed here to the Musical Instrument Museum, otherwise known as the MIM. She will be playing live on Thursday, June 14th, and tickets are available at themim.org. By any chance, Paula, have you been to the MIM before, and have you played there?
I have. I've played there a couple of times. It's an amazing theater. I love
Yes.
being there.
Yeah,
It
Marla's
sounds beautiful. The audiences are loving. I just love it. I'm psyched to be back.
good to hear. Like I said, we always love doing shows at the MIM, and it's just a great place that every music fan or even non-music fan should go and visit at least once. It's an amazing place.
It is amazing.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back now. We'll go a year later after the duets performance, roughly. You're now part of it was history making, the Lilith Fair, and you were on the first inaugural one, if you will, in '97. What are your recollections of that? And give us a couple of cool stories if you could.
Sure. I was there in 97. I was there in 98. And it all started because Sarah McLachlan and I were touring together in 95. I was supporting her on her Fumbling Towards Ecstasy tour. So I was touring with Sarah when Harbinger was out. We were, again, going all over the United States and into Canada. And I was her opening artist. This was before Melissa Etheridge. That was a great year of touring with both Sarah McLachlan and Melissa Etheridge. But I was on Sarah's Fumbling Towards Ecstasy tour, and it was going really well. And I was really appreciative of the fact that I was placed as the opener on Sarah's tour because I was well aware that that usually didn't happen. That they liked, if you're a female in the music business in the 90s, you're encouraged not to have another female. You're encouraged to kind of always be you were usually the only female. I mean, we just were. I'm just so used to it. When I went to Berklee College of Music, the male to female ratio was 13-1, and welcome to the music business.
Right.
And then I was almost always the only female in the van or the bus or I was just very used to that. And lo and behold, these other women were so supportive to me, and we had a great time on tour. It was a natural fit, and I would thank Sarah from the stage saying, "Hey everybody, Sarah is so great for inviting me here. It's very uncommon to see two women on the same roster. It's very uncommon to see two women on the same playlist at a radio station." Right. DJs were encouraged then not to put women together. We were token, and we'd be like maybe one for every 10 males. So, and that's true. I've spoken to so many DJs and programmers from that era that was the culture. So it went really well, and the audiences knew it to be true, and they would applaud like mad. They really understand what a struggle it was. And so it snowballed, and Sarah started trying some test concerts where it was like maybe Tracy Chapman and Suzanne Vega and herself and myself, and they would go really well. So she came to me one day and said, "I think I'm going to call it Lilith Fair." And so it was born, and I was part of that genesis. I'm really lucky to have been part of that genesis, part of the idea even. I was there in 97. We started at the Gorge, this amazing amphitheater in Washington State, and we toured the United States. It was electrifying. To me, it felt more like probably what Woodstock probably felt like, right. Just for the peace of it, the love, the peace, the equity, the belief in all people. The audiences were amazing, and it felt like we were changing culture and we were doing good. So I'm still really proud to have been part of it.
Yeah. So now, if we go a little further, your alma mater is the Berklee College of Music, and as of I believe 2013, you're now a professor at your alma mater. How did that come to pass, and how challenging is it to be a professor and a professional musician simultaneously?
I know, isn't it kind of weird, like Professor Cole? But my dad was a professor, so I guess it works.
Right.
And I went to Berklee, and I still have a lot of community there, a lot of great friends, so it feels natural. They let me do my thing. I sometimes have to sub out a lot when I've got a lot of touring. It is really, really hard sometimes. It's hard to do it all. But I'm in those middle years of, I've got kids going to college soon, and I'm working. Right. It's all good.
Right. Wow. And during your time at Berklee as a student, were there any other soon-to-be more famous musicians who eventually made it like yourself that you went to college with during your time?
Absolutely. I was always with Layla Hathaway. Now, this is Donny Hathaway's daughter, and she's got the most stunning voice. She sounds like her father. So she and I were always paired together kind of as little stars at Berklee. Also, Susan Tedeschi from Tedeschi Trucks Band was there with me, and Diana Krall was kind of on the down low. She was just kind of keeping her cool while at Berklee, not doing too much, just absorbing and learning. But yeah, a lot of amazing people were there. A lot of brilliant jazz artists too, like Roy Hargrove, Julia Joseph. I mean, beautiful players from all styles of music.
Right. And that's so important to you that you really don't like the labels that, and you're well known to say that there's no room for labels in music. Music is music. And that definitely is something I enjoy hearing so much, because there's room for everybody. There's room for all genres. The labeling, I agree with you, gets very old.
That's right. I think it's even damaging. We box ourselves in, we're siloed and we're labeled. And really that's a product of demographics for advertising, for channels to make money and so forth.
Right.
But it's really healthy, I think. I love the independent days. I remember them, the independent days of radio, when a DJ had his or her singular choices what to play. I'm going to play Janis Joplin next to Miles Davis, next to, Eurythmics or whatever.
Right.
It was free,
right,
and it was healthy. It's even true in biology. Like the wider the genetic information, the healthier the species is going to be. So it's like, to me, I love it. It should be mixed. We shouldn't be boxed in. Often I find, like, musically, I'm categorized by gender,
right,
age, race,
right, and
these are not necessary things. Music is the universal language. We all respond to it. We all need it. So, yeah, I listen to all kinds of music. I'll listen to West African music and jazz and folk and pop and R&B, soul and Bob Marley. Right. I like the question, not what kind of music do you listen to, like what artists do you listen to?
Well said. I don't know how to follow that with that. So go back to your teen years, if you will. What was the first album you bought and the first concert you attended?
Well, I remember the first concert I attended. That was Devo. I was so into Devo at the Boston Orpheum. And I tried to look, I didn't even know what punk was, but I dressed up with makeup and gel in my hair. And that was cool. I don't know if you remember that song, Whip It, or if anybody there knows that. Whip It Good. Yeah, it was really good. let's see, the first album, I don't remember. I don't remember my first album. I lived at the tip of an island where you couldn't even get the reception for the decent FM radio stations. So I think there might have been some Hall & Oates there as like my first 45. Wow. I'm seriously dating myself.
Hey,
but I think my first 45 was a Hall & Oates 45. Yeah.
Reminder of viewers, we're speaking with Paula Cole. And reminder, Paula Cole will be coming to town on Thursday, June 14th at the MIM, the Musical Instrument Museum. Tickets are available at themim.org. And a couple minutes we have left. On your personal favorites of the 90s, who would you say really stood out to you of your era, our era, I should say, and musically, vocally, who stood out to you during that time?
Jeff Buckley. His voice and his playing was just, I mean, it's legendary stuff. He found himself, and his influences, again, were diverse. I mean, from Led Zeppelin to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan was one of his favorite, who's a devotional Sufi singer that was introduced to the world by Peter Gabriel through his Real World label. I mean, and Jeff Buckley combined very diverse influences and made beauty. So he was truly something special for me. In the 90s, I was a fan of Nirvana, and I was just, he died on my birthday. In 1994, I was in a photo shoot. It was my birthday, and my heart was so heavy. I just so much wanted to meet him and hear him live. So that's who come to mind right now. Of course, I'll think of much better answers once this interview's over.
You answered it.
Why did I say
so
that?
With that, as you know, as a music educator and as a musician, you know that the importance, a lot of people will say that the future is all about new music too. What newer artists would you say are you impressed with today?
There's not a lot, but I like the sound of some of the things Solange Knowles is doing, and I have some students that give me really like a lot of hope. And there's one band, they were my students, and now they've made a band, and they're called the Western Den. And I just love, they're kind of like ethereal folk, beautiful vocals and playing. So that's all I can think of right now.
Right. That's okay. Hey,
you put me on the spot, Val.
Like I said, I love hearing the musicians talk about the artists, because the viewers love hearing your point of view. And who better to talk to you than the musicians who were there, as the way we look at it. I'll let you go in a couple minutes. Really quickly, as I want to ask this, I think it's really important. Being again a music educator, Professor Paula Cole, and what do you think how are the universities today? Is the music education healthy in the universities? Because as you know, in public schools, it's a disgrace. How is it on a higher level, education level? How do you think the music programs, by and large, are?
That's a great question, and I thank you for asking it, Val, because you're concerned about the health of our society, basically.
I tried
by asking the question. Yeah. And one thing that strikes me as a tragedy is that probably one of the most unique American art forms is jazz. And there's just not a lot of Americans that are following this profound art form. The great young jazz students are coming from Europe now. And mostly they're white, and that's ironic because it's like it was an African American art form. It's meant for everybody. It's love, it's freedom. Jazz is, it's open for everybody. But it's just that hurts my heart. I think that American students at the college level at Berkeley, they are showing the fact that I think there's less musical literacy than there was when I was there. More of my peers were better educated in music and could read music better, and they were just a little faster with their ears. So I take that with heaviness of heart, but like determined spirit to still be strong with them,
Yes.
to have them understand, well, this is what you need to know, and you need to worship at the altar of the masters so that you're excellent. Because if you go out there in the world, first of all, the music business is really hard.
Right.
And if you aren't amazing and hardworking and polite and entrepreneurial and gracious to every person in the building, then there's going to be someone else who is, and they're going to have the career and you aren't.
Right.
So, I go out on the road, I come back and I share my experience with them, and I push them to be better. I push them to listen to Chet Baker and Miles Davis. I'll push them to write emotionally, to journal every day, to try to be a better human being. All of these things make you a better musician.
Right.
So I'm doing my best, but yes, I do see a change in musical literacy, and that's a reflection of our society as a whole. And you see differences. Say Iceland has very little depression, and even though it's a very northern country with long periods of darkness at certain parts of the year, they do not experience such depression because they've got music. They have an enormous amount of music schools per capita, basically, and
right.
And so the musical literacy level there is high, and the music output is high. I see modern composers in the classical forums, like at the New York Philharmonic. The last time I went there, the new composer they featured was from Iceland. And the last time I went to the Boston Symphony, it was a composer from England, a new composer that they were featuring. So it's interesting to me that they're coming more from Europe.
Right.
And I think this is a reflection of the fact that we're not putting our money and resources and heart as a society into music. And that's a shame, because music makes society safer statistically. There's less crime. There's just more nourishment of people's psyches. They become less violent. They become in touch with their feelings, and that makes them healthier people. And then you just get a better society. It's good for the economy. It's good for one's own growth. Music, man, is like the universal language. It heals hearts and opens minds. I can't say enough about it. It's the very thing we need, I think, right now.
Wow, that was a perfect way to conclude this. Man, we could talk for hours on this. Paula, thank you so much for your time. And just a reminder to our viewers, Paula Cole will be in town on Thursday, June 14th at the MIM, otherwise known as the Musical Instrument Museum. Tickets are available at themim.org. Paula, it was a pleasure and honor to speak to you. And we can't wait for the show. And good luck with the rest of the tour.
Oh, thank you, Val. I'll
You're
see you
welcome.
there at the show then.
All right, take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.